The void's softest murmurs stretched across the cosmos, drifting past radiant nebulae, through the deep emptiness between star clusters, and into the audio receivers of countless species. Tonight, those murmurs were thick with dread. The humans have been silent for far too long, declared a voice in the Varl Dominion's Grand Council chamber. It's when a predator is quiet that it poses the greatest threat. Admiral Xerto, his patterned skin shining beneath the chamber's artificial lamps, dismissed the anxiety with a quick twitch of his secondary limb. Humans? They're just border nomads, inconsequential. 3 centuries of space expansion. And what holdings do they claim? A paltry 7 star systems. The room, packed with delegates from the Dominion's 17 governing species, vibrated with consensus. Only Counselor Mavis, whose antiquity and wisdom were renowned even among the enduring Aurelians, remained motionless. Her multifaceted eyes were fixed on a holographic projection of Earth. "They've refused our integration charter 17 times," the Admiral's voice resumed, infused with a practiced air of authority. "They deliberately isolate themselves from established galactic society. Their commerce is negligible. They offer no support to our collective defenses. Yet they insist on the privileges of full members." He paused, clicking his mandibles together in what his kind considered a scornful chuckle. "The time has come to definitively resolve the human anomaly." From a shadowed corner of the room, Mavis finally spoke. Her low voice carried an unsettling gravity that quieted even Xerto's most vocal proponents. "Proceed with caution," she advised simply. "Those who appear weakest often conceal secrets capable of incinerating entire worlds." Admiral Xerto's accessory eyes narrowed. "Are you advocating for these primates, Counselor? Has your extensive memory finally failed you?" "My memory is quite adequate, thank you," Mavis responded. "It easily recalls the fate of the last civilization that underestimated a quiet species." "But you wouldn't remember the Kolnar, would you, Admiral? They are no longer mentioned in your historical archives." Mavis rose, her ancient form surprisingly upright. Xerto brushed aside her warning with another mandatory click. "The Council will vote now. The human problem demands immediate closure. We will dispatch our terms for their unconditional surrender and full assimilation into the Dominion's governance." The votes were counted. The verdict was final. The ultimatum was launched across the vast galaxy. All eyes were now trained on Earth. Colonel Lynn O'Shea hadn't been on Earth for 15 years. Following the IO atrocity, where Xerto had knowingly left 20,000 human settlers to perish in Jupiter's lethal radiation bands, Lynn had retreated to Proxima Centauri B. There, in the dim light of a planet orbiting a red dwarf, he had constructed a secluded dwelling overlooking a rust-colored ocean. The summons arrived on a Tuesday. "Colonel," a voice spoke over the quantum communication system. "The Human Council urgently request your return to active duty." Lynn observed the holographic face, his rugged features showing no emotion. He was 53 now. His formerly dark hair was shot with silver, and his eyes bore the distinctive neural augmentation rings of a veteran of clandestine warfare. "I'm retired," he stated flatly. "This is not a request that permits refusal," General Harkins replied, her projected face stern. "The Varl have issued an ultimatum. Total surrender within 72 Earth hours, or they will commence what they term species realignment." Lynn's expression remained fixed, but the hand resting on his chair arm clenched subtly. "And what does the Council intend to do?" he inquired, already suspecting the dire answer. "We are deploying the Star Forged." The words hung heavy between them. The Star Forged Dreadnought, humanity's deepest secret. It was a weapon so destructive that its very existence was compartmentalized. Fewer than 50 humans knew of it. Lynn himself had helped conceive it. After IO, after witnessing Xerto's vessels systematically destroy the colony's life support, he had funneled his grief and fury into the design. "The neural link is calibrated to you," Harkins continued as Lynn stayed silent. "No one else can operate it at its peak capacity." "You mean no one else can endure the psychological stress?" Lynn countered. "Do you comprehend what it is to have your mind merged with an entity born inside a dying star? Something that neither thinks nor feels as we do? But you survived the connection before." "Barely," Lynn said, rising and walking toward the window overlooking the Crimson Sea. "And I was younger then and consumed by rage." "Are you suggesting you're no longer angry, Lynn?" Harkin's voice softened slightly. Lynn pressed his forehead against the cool glass. What he did at IO? What I feel is irrelevant. What matters is whether I can maintain control once linked. If I fail, you will lose me. You won't lose control, she asserted. You can't guarantee that. We are sending Vanya to assist you. Lynn spun around. Dr. Lowe? She's still working? She is the foremost neural interface psychologist we have, and she understands you. Lynn momentarily closed his eyes. Vanya Liu had been there after the initial catastrophic test of the neural link, the one who had pulled him back from the edge when the Dreadnought's alien consciousness had nearly subsumed his own. When? He finally asked. The transport arrives in 6 hours. The Varl are broadcasting their advance across every galactic frequency. They are making a spectacle of this, Lynn. They want the entire galaxy to witness Earth's defeat. Lynn's lip curled into a thin sneer. Then I suppose we should give them a show. The return journey to Earth took 3 days despite the military transport's quantum jump capabilities. Lynn spent most of the transit in deep meditation, preparing his mind for the ordeal ahead. Dr. Vanya Liu joined him on the 2nd day, boarding at the Mars transfer hub. You look well, she remarked as a greeting, her sharp eyes taking his measure. At 62 she was still striking, her posture impeccable, her black hair now accented by a streak of electric blue, a stylistic choice that somehow suited her meticulous nature. You look like you're still terrifying your students, he replied, a fleeting trace of a smile touching his lips. Someone must uphold the standards, she said, taking a seat opposite him in the transport's small meditation room. They informed me you've been in complete isolation. I've had company. Your nightmares don't count as company, Colonel. Lynn's near smile vanished. I've managed them. Have you? Or have you simply constructed walls high enough that you don't have to look at them? She leaned forward. The Star Forged will rip those walls down. You know this, I do. Yet I agreed to return. They are threatening Earth. Earth possesses conventional defenses, fleets, insufficient against the Varl deployment. We've intercepted their intelligence. They're mobilizing their entire Southern Arm fleet, 37 capital ships and over 200 support vessels. Dr. Liu's demeanor remained calm, but a flicker of concern crossed her eyes. That's overkill for a minor species like ours. They're creating a precedent. They intend to show the galaxy what happens to those who refuse their dominion. And we, Lynn stated, are going to show them something entirely different. But I require your assistance, he admitted, to maintain my tether when I link with the Star Forged. Tell me about your current mental state, clinically, however you wish to articulate it. Lynn remained silent for a considerable time. I thought I had achieved peace on Proxima B. The rage was still there, but distant, like a storm on the horizon that never quite breaks. But now, he unconsciously flexed his fingers. Now I feel it again, just beneath my skin. Is it pathological, he asked, to crave justice so fiercely that even after 15 years it feels immediate? Dr. Liu observed him. The desire for justice isn't a disease, Lynn, the IO atrocity. Don't. His voice suddenly turned sharp. Don't call it that. An atrocity implies chaos, frenzy. What Xerto did was methodical, calculated. He disabled the colony shields during a solar storm, then broadcast their distress calls across every frequency, while simultaneously barring rescue efforts. He forced us to hear them die one by one as the radiation took its toll. His hands clenched into fists, which he slowly forced open. I don't seek revenge, he concluded finally. I demand justice. I want him to truly understand what he did. Dr. Liu's expression softened slightly. That distinction may be the precise difference between mastering the Star Forged and being consumed by it. I know. Lynn closed his eyes. Help me hold on to it. The outer sector of Earth's solar system was unnervingly silent as the transport neared. The transit paths between the asteroid belt and Neptune, usually bustling with cargo and trading ships, were empty, save for the occasional military patrol vessel. From the viewport, Lynn saw the colossal form of Jupiter. His gaze automatically drifted toward Io, its mottled yellow-orange surface a perpetual monument to human loss. The moon had been repopulated since the tragedy, but everyone knew it was now more a memorial site than a viable colony. We are receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command, the transport's captain announced. The Varl fleet has passed the heliopause. Estimated arrival at Neptune's orbit approximately 6 hours. Lynn and Dr. Liu exchanged a decisive look. It was time. They transferred to a smaller, faster vessel at the Mars defense perimeter. This ship bore no identifiers. Its hull was a peculiar, light-absorbing black that seemed to visually warp the space around it. Dark light technology, Dr. Liu muttered, running her hand near the surface of the interior wall. I've only read about this. Reverse-engineered from the same stellar material as the Star Forged. It neither reflects nor absorbs light, Lynn confirmed. It redirects it around itself, making the ship virtually invisible to optical sensors and most other detection methods. The pilot's voice cut in. We'll reach the forge in 20 minutes. Colonel, you should prepare. Lynn felt a knot form in his chest. The forge, humanity's definitive secret, was hidden in plain sight at the far reaches of the system. Where is it? Dr. Liu asked, peering into the star-flecked blackness. Pluto, Lynn said quietly, or more accurately, inside Pluto. Her eyes widened slightly. The entire dwarf planet is a shell, a containment structure built around the forge. Their small vessel approached the distant, nondescript dwarf planet. To any casual observer, Pluto looked perfectly natural, a frigid, distant globe of ice and rock. But as they drew closer, a segment of the surface seemed to shimmer, then smoothly parted, revealing a massive hangar bay carved directly into the planet's core. The Varl never knew. Dr. Liu whispered. All these years we've maintained the deception. Automated research stations falsified scientific data, Lynn confirmed. The official record states Pluto research was abandoned decades ago due to a lack of valuable resources. Their ship slipped into the bay, which sealed seamlessly behind them. Inside was a vast, bustling cavern. Hundreds of technicians and engineers moved with purpose around gear that looked both ancient and impossibly cutting-edge. But all attention was drawn to the immense shape suspended in the center of the chamber, the Star Forged Dreadnought. It was gigantic. Lynn estimated it at least 5 kilometers long, though its true scale was difficult to perceive. Its hull appeared to devour light, creating the impression of a ship-shaped void in reality. Occasional energy pulses, like veins of molten rock and black obsidian, traced patterns across its surface that seemed almost biological. My God, breathed Dr. Liu. It's beautiful. It's terrifying, Lynn gently corrected her, as it was intended to be. They disembarked and were met by a delegation led by Admiral Santiago, the head of the Human Defense Council. Colonel O'Shea, Santiago said, extending her hand. Thank you for answering the call. I didn't have much of a choice, Lynn shook it briefly. There is always a choice. Santiago turned to Dr. Liu. Doctor, your expertise will be vital in the next few hours. I understand, she replied. When will the interface be ready? It's been ready for 15 years, Santiago said, her gaze returning to Lynn, awaiting its pilot. Lynn felt a sudden chill. You've kept the neural configuration. All this time? We had no other option, Santiago admitted. No one else has ever successfully interfaced with it at more than 20% capacity. You reached 87%, and almost lost my mind in the process, Lynn reminded her. We've refined the interface since then, Santiago assured him, and you've had time to process the experience. They walked toward the dreadnought, passing through a series of security barriers. Around them, technicians worked with an air of controlled urgency on what appeared to be final preparations. The Varl fleet is broadcasting their approach on all frequencies, Santiago explained. They're attempting to make a spectacle of this, to show the galaxy how they punish defiant species. Their transmissions have reached every corner of the Dominion. Good, Lynn said quietly. Let them watch. They reached a lift designed to take them into the ship. Before entering, Santiago stopped, fixing Lynn with a serious stare. There is one thing you must know before you go aboard. The ship. It has changed since your last interface, Lynn frowned. How so? It has evolved. The core consciousness has developed in ways we couldn't predict. It's now more coherent, more self-aware. Are you saying it's alive? Santiago hesitated. We're saying it's something we don't fully comprehend, which is why we need you. Someone it has bonded with before. The lift doors closed, cutting off further discussion. As they rose into the ship's massive structure, Lynn felt a familiar psychic sensation, a pressure at the edges of his consciousness, like standing by the sea and feeling the first pull of an immense tide. It remembered him, The neural interface chamber was buried deep within the dreadnought, secured by layers of physical and energetic protection. It was a spherical room with walls of a material that seemed to shimmer like liquid metal. In the center floated a chair, or a close approximation, formed from the same fluidic substance. Various monitors surrounded it, attended by a team of neural specialists who looked up as Lynn, Dr. Liu, and Admiral Santiago entered. "Everything is prepared, Admiral," the lead technician stated. "We've fine-tuned the interface parameters based on Colonel O'Shea's last neural signature." Lynn approached the chair with a sense of weariness. "How much time will I have once I'm connected?" "The interface is optimized for approximately 12 hours before neural exhaustion becomes a critical risk," the technician explained. "However, you can disconnect whenever necessary." "And if I am unable to disconnect?" Lynn asked softly. The technician exchanged a glance with Dr. Liu, who stepped forward. "That is my role," she stated firmly. "I will be continuously monitoring your neural patterns. At the first indication of entanglement beyond safe limits, we will initiate an emergency disconnect." Lynn nodded slowly. "And the dreadnought? What happens to it if I'm suddenly cut off?" "It reverts to autonomous mode," Santiago answered. "Basic defensive capabilities only, which are substantial," the technician added. "But without a pilot, it cannot harness its full potential." Lynn took a deep breath, removed his jacket, and began rolling up his sleeve. The interface required a direct link to the central nervous system. A small neural tap would be inserted at the base of his skull, with secondary connections running down his spine. "The Varl fleet has cleared Neptune's orbit," announced one of the monitoring specialists. "Estimated time to Earth 4 hours and 17 minutes. "We must begin," Dr. Liu said, her professional tone unwavering. "Colonel, please take your position." Lynn settled into the floating chair, which immediately molded itself to his body, securing him with a gentle yet firm embrace. Neural specialists moved quickly, attaching monitors and preparing the connections. "Remember," Dr. Liu instructed, standing before him, "you are the one in control. The Star Forged is a tool, not your master. Your consciousness is the dominant force in this relationship." Lynn gave her a weak smile. "We both know that's not entirely true, Doctor." She held his gaze. "Make it true." The primary neural tap was inserted at the base of his skull, a sharp jolt followed by a spreading coldness. Secondary connections followed along his spine, each one bringing a new strange sensation, pressure, tingling, and an odd feeling of internal expansion. "Neural interface initializing," announced a specialist. "Connection at 5%, 10%, 20%. Lynn closed his eyes as the familiar pressure intensified. It felt like standing at the threshold of a vast echoing space, feeling the air change as an enormous gate slowly swung open before him. 40%. 50%. Images began to bombard his mind. Stars in the throes of birth and death, the slow, complex ballet of galaxies, the patient, terrible power of a black hole consuming matter. These were not his memories. They belonged to the mysterious consciousness dwelling in the core of the Star Forged. 165%. 70%. The pressure was becoming overwhelming, a sense of something ancient and immense pressing against the fragile confines of his own identity. Lynn concentrated on his breathing, using the techniques Dr. Liu had taught him. Acceptance without surrender. Observation without absorption. 80%. 85%. The barrier between Lynn and the Star Forged was dissolving. He could sense its immense curiosity, its profound patience, its horrifying power, and beneath it all a single question repeated itself like a ceaseless rhythm. "Why did you leave us alone for so long?" 90% connection achieved, the specialist called out, a note of profound awe in his voice. "Neural pattern stabilizing. Sync rate nominal." Lynn opened his eyes, but his vision was no longer limited to the physical chamber. He saw the dreadnought not from the outside, but as an awareness distributed throughout its entire structure. He saw the technicians around him, their bodies glowing with bioelectrical energy. He saw through the ship's hull, through the artificial planetoid that hid it, and out into the blackness of space. And there, approaching from the outer system, he saw the Varl fleet, a sinister constellation of predatory silhouettes moving in flawless formation. "Connection complete," a voice said, seemingly originating from an immense distance. "Colonel O'Shea, can you hear us?" Lynn felt that human speech was utterly redundant. Instead, he formulated his reply as a thought, and the Dreadnought's communication system instantly translated it into audible words. "I hear you." His disembodied voice resonated in the interface chamber, "and I can see them coming." Across the vast distances of the galaxy, billions of sentient beings monitored their information streams with mounting suspense. The Varl Dominion had ensured maximum publicity for their pacification of Earth, placing media vessels near their war fleet, and continuously broadcasting updates and commentary across all major communication networks. "The human leadership persists in disregarding our reasonable demands," declared a Varl commentator, his mandibles clicking in a recognized pattern of authoritative speech. "Their silence merely validates their primitive nature and their unfitness for galactic civilization." The visual display showed the formidable Varl armada, sleek, predatory ships with hulls that gleamed, reflecting the distant starlight. They moved with clockwork precision, their formation an intimidating display of military discipline. "We are receiving word that Admiral Xerto has issued a final warning," the commentator continued. "Earth has one standard hour to transmit their surrender before corrective measures begin." In countless public squares, homes and gathering places across the galaxy, various species watched with complex emotions. The dominant Varl races felt satisfaction or indifference, just another minor species being brought to heel. The subjugated races watched with a weary resignation, perhaps a hidden sympathy for the humans, but with no expectation of a different outcome. They had witnessed this routine many times. On the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Dominance, Admiral Xerto stood with his forearms locked behind his back, his primary eyes fixed on the main view screen, which showed the blue-green planet steadily growing larger. Still no communication from the humans. "Admiral," his communications officer reported. "As anticipated," Xerto replied, his voice carrying the multi-tonal harmonics that conveyed pleasure in his species. "They understand that resistance is futile. Perhaps they are still debating which representative to send for the surrender ritual." A soft, appreciative clicking sound, the Varl equivalent of a chuckle, rippled through the bridge crew. "Admiral," the sensor officer broke in, her voice suddenly strained. "We are detecting a massive energy signature at the system's edge near the dwarf planet." Xerto turned, his secondary eyes swiveling to focus on the officer. "What type of signature?" "Unknown, sir. It's not classified on any of our standard protocols, and it is immense." "Display it." The main view screen changed, zooming out to show the whole solar system. A pulsating red dot appeared near Pluto's orbital path. "Magnify," Xerto ordered. The image zoomed, but bizarrely, nothing was visibly present at the coordinates of the energy reading. Only empty space. "Sensor malfunction," Xerto suggested, a note of annoyance entering his voice. "Negative, sir. Multiple systems confirm the reading. Something is unequivocally there, but our optical sensors cannot detect it. Switch to gravitational mapping." The screen shifted again, showing a gravitational field visualization. There, undeniable, centered on the display, was the outline of something enormous, a vessel far greater than anything in the entire Varl fleet. "Impossible," Xerto gasped, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "The humans do not possess this technology. Our intelligence network would have detected it." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." For a moment, Xerto seemed almost relieved. "They're surrendering, then? Put it through." But instead of a diplomatic message, the screen filled with the image of a human female in a military uniform. Admiral Chen Santiago's expression was composed, almost serene. "Admiral Xerto," she said, her voice steady. "On behalf of the Human Defense Council, I acknowledge receipt of your ultimatum." Xerto's mandibles fell silent. "And you accept our terms?" "No." Santiago's expression did not waver. "We reject them entirely. The sovereign systems of humanity will never submit to Varl authority." Anger flared in Xerto. "Then you have chosen extinction for your species." "We haven't finished," Santiago interjected, an act simply not done when addressing a Varl admiral. "You came to our home with threats, Admiral. You brought a fleet to intimidate us. You broadcast your intentions to the galaxy, fully expecting to make an example of us." Her eyes sharpened slightly. "So we will make an example of you instead." Before Xerto could even formulate a response, Santiago glanced off screen and gave a single nod. "Release the Star Forged." The transmission abruptly cut out. Admiral. The sensor officer's voice was now edged with panic. The object is accelerating. It's moving toward our position at an impossible velocity. Battle stations. Xerto roared. All ships defensive formation Talon 7. Charge weapons and prepare for... Orders were swallowed by the sudden appearance on the view screen of what had been invisible moments before. It emerged from the blackness like a fragment of the void-given form, a massive vessel that seemed to absorb all light around it. Its design was utterly alien to the Dominion's known ship types. It was not sleek or aggressive, but somehow ancient and irresistible, like a natural disaster rendered in metal. Intermittent pulses of energy, the color of stellar fire, traced complex paths across its surface that uncomfortably reminded Xerto of neural pathways. "What is that thing?" whispered his second-in-command. Xerto had no answer. For perhaps the first time in his long military career, he experienced a sensation he recognized with a detached surprise as fear. Across all Dominion broadcasts, on every newsfeed in the galaxy, the image of the Star Forged Dreadnought appeared, a horrifying herald from the void that had until this moment been confined to humanity's most fiercely guarded secrets. And across the galaxy, billions of watching eyes widened in stunned silence and awe. Inside the neural interface chamber, Lynn existed in a state of duality. His physical form remained strapped into the interface chair, meticulously monitored by Dr. Liu and the team. Yet his consciousness was extended throughout the dreadnought, fused with its ancient awareness. He felt the propulsion systems as powerful limbs, the sensor arrays as magnified senses, and the weapon batteries as muscles coiled and ready to strike. Underlying it all was the alien consciousness of the Star Forged itself. Patient, deeply curious, and terrifyingly, "They are afraid of us," the Star Forged communicated, not through words but through sensations and raw concepts that Lynn's mind instantly decoded. "They cannot comprehend our nature." Excellent, Lynn thought back. Fear is a valuable asset when facing bullies. The dreadnought maintained its course toward the Varl fleet, which had already dissolved its tidy formation and was now frantically organizing a defensive alignment. Lynn sensed their comms, frantic chatter, urgent demands for data, and preparations for engagement. "Admiral Santiago." Lynn communicated through the dreadnought systems, his voice resounding back in the Pluto Control Center. "The Varl are energizing their weapons." "As anticipated," came Santiago's firm reply. "Your orders are unchanged, Colonel. Demonstrate capability, but no preemptive strikes. We are not the aggressors." "Understood." Lynn halted the dreadnought roughly 100,000 kilometers from the Varl fleet, close enough to project undeniable menace, yet distant enough to grant them space for reconsideration. "They're performing deep scans," he reported calmly, feeling the faint brush of various sensor beams attempting to breach the ship's distinctive hull. "They're getting no usable data." "Let them try," Santiago replied. "It's time they realize there are forces in this galaxy beyond their limited comprehension." Through the dreadnought's heightened sensory apparatus, Lynn detected the escalating panic among the Varl ships. Their formation solidified into a standard defensive position, with smaller vessels shielding the core capital ships. "They are preparing to fire," he observed without inflection. "Should we offer a display?" The Star-Forged consciousness asked, a ripple of something akin to eagerness flowing through its thoughts. "Not yet," Lynn silently replied. "Let them initiate the confrontation." He didn't have to wait long. A group of Varl destroyers peeled off from the formation, accelerating toward the dreadnought with fully charged weapons. "Warning shots," came Xerto's command, broadcast openly across all frequencies, a theatrical gesture meant to project restraint to the watching galaxy despite the human provocation. "Target their propulsion systems," Lynn instructed. Energy beams streaked out from the Varl ships, slicing across the void toward the dreadnought. Lynn watched them approach with detached curiosity, sensing the Starforged's own passive interest in the attack. The beams, powerful enough to obliterate any conventional vessel, struck the dreadnought's hull. Then something utterly unexpected occurred. Instead of being absorbed or deflected, the energy simply seemed to cease existing. There was no noticeable impact, no dispersion effect. The beams made contact with the dreadnought's surface and vanished as if they had never been launched. Profound silence descended across all communication channels. "They truly do not understand," the Star Forged remarked with what seemed like pity. Their physics are so rudimentary. Should we elaborate for them? Yes, Lynn answered the ship. It is time for the first demonstration. Lynn accessed the Dreadnought's primary system, what the design team had termed the logic field, and aimed it at the Varl vessels that had just fired. This was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It didn't explode or inflict damage. It simply corrected inconsistencies in reality. A subtle ripple of distortion spread out from the Dreadnought, invisible except as a slight warping of the distant starlight. When it reached the Varl ships, it enveloped them gently, almost softly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with unsettling silence, the ships' hulls began to change. It started as a visible shimmer, then progressed to structural alterations. Sections of the vessels appeared to fold in on themselves, components rearranging according to some incomprehensible internal logic. "What is happening to my ships?" Xerto's voice demanded over the open channel, a tremor of fear now audible in his multi-tonal speech. Lynn opened a direct communication link to the Varl flagship. When he spoke, his voice carried an otherworldly resonance, sounding as if multiple voices were speaking in perfect, chilling harmony. "Your weapons operate by disrupting the molecular bonds of their targets," he explained calmly. "But in doing so, they create a momentary quantum inconsistency, a fraction of a second when physical laws are bent, but not yet broken." On the view screens of ships throughout the Varl fleet, Lynn's face appeared, subtly altered, overlaid with patterns of light that pulsed in sync with his words. "The Star Forged merely completes the process," he continued. "It extends the inconsistency to its logical conclusion. Your weapons attempt to violate physical laws. We permit those laws to fail entirely." As he spoke, the affected Varl ships continued their eerie transformation. Entire sections of hull plate collapsed into impossible geometric forms. Energy cores imploded not in a violent explosion, but in a smooth conversion of matter back into pure energy. Within minutes, where 6 Varl destroyers had floated, there was nothing left but scattered particles drifting like dust motes in a sunbeam. No fire, no wreckage, no conventional destruction, just a complete rearrangement according to laws of physics the Varl, and most species had never encountered. "This is your only warning," Lynn declared, his voice echoing across all Dominion broadcasts, reaching billions of viewers throughout the galaxy. "The Star Forge does not destroy. It corrects. It remakes. What was once a ship becomes elementary particles. What was once a fleet becomes cosmic dust." He paused, letting the terrifying implications sink in. "You have 1 hour to completely withdraw from Earth space. After that, we will commence systematic corrections of all remaining Varl vessels." The transmission ended, leaving a stunned silence over the Varl fleet. In the neural interface chamber on Pluto, Dr. Liu watched Lynn's vital signs with growing alarm. His neural patterns showed signs of increasing stress, not yet critical but worrisome. "Colonel," she spoke into the comm system, "your integration rate is nearing 93%. That is beyond our established safety parameters." Lynn's physical body remained motionless, but his voice emerged from the chamber speakers. "I'm in control, Doctor. The Star Forged is cooperative. Your stress indicators suggest otherwise," she countered. "I'm seeing patterns consistent with identity diffusion." "It's not diffusion," Lynn corrected. "It's expansion. I'm still me, just more than me." Lau exchanged a worried glance with Admiral Santiago, who had returned to the control center after her galactic broadcast. "He's right about one thing," Santiago noted quietly. "The Star Forged is acting differently than in previous tests. It seems to be working with him rather than trying to absorb him." "That is precisely what concerns me," Lau admitted. "We do not understand its motivations. If it's being cooperative, it is for its own unknowable reasons." On the monitors, the standoff continued. The remaining Varl fleet had backed into a tighter defensive perimeter, but had not yet retreated from the system. Frantic communications were undoubtedly flying back to the Dominion Central Command. "They're debating their next move," Santiago observed. "Xerto is too proud to flee immediately, but he's not foolish enough to launch another full attack after that display." "And Lynn?" Lau asked.
"How long can he maintain this connection?"
"As long as necessary," came Lynn's voice from the speakers, startling them both. The neural interface had clearly granted him a level of awareness beyond what they had anticipated, allowing him to listen to their conversation. Santiago addressed him directly. What is your assessment of the situation, Colonel? The Varl are intimidated but not defeated, Lynn replied. Xerto is weighing his options. He's communicating with the Dominion Council, arguing that this is a direct threat to their entire power structure. Can you intercept their communications? I don't need to. The Star Forged can sense their intentions, not their thoughts precisely, but energy patterns that correlate to emotional and decision states. Lo frowned. That is not a capability we documented in the original trials. The Star Forged has evolved, Lynn said simply, as I told you it would. What else can it do that we don't know about? Santiago asked, a newfound caution entering her voice. There was a brief pause before Lynn answered. It wants to show you, but not yet. First, we must resolve this immediate crisis. On the main monitor, movement appeared within the Varl fleet. A single ship, smaller than the capital vessels, but clearly distinguished by its design, broke away from the main formation, heading cautiously toward the Dreadnought. Xerto's personal shuttle, Lynn identified it. He's coming to negotiate. That is unprecedented, Santiago said, surprised. The Varl never negotiate when they believe they hold the advantage. They no longer believe that, Lynn countered. But Xerto has another motive. He wants to see the Star Forged up close to understand what he's facing. Are you going to permit it? Yes, Lynn said, and something in his tone sent a noticeable chill through Lou. I want him to see exactly what humanity is capable of. Admiral Xerto's shuttle approached the Star Forged Dreadnought with agonizing slowness. Its passive sensors worked overtime, desperate to gather any data on the mysterious vessel. But the readings remained frustratingly inconclusive, as if the ship existed partly outside normal spacetime. Maintain this course, Xerto commanded his pilot, his outward calm concealing the knot of tension he felt. In his 4 decades of military service, he had never encountered anything that so utterly defied the known laws of Dominion physics. Sir, his communications officer spoke up, we're receiving docking coordinates. They're inviting us aboard. Xerto's secondary eyes widened slightly. This was unexpected and potentially dangerous, yet it presented a crucial opportunity for intelligence gathering. Proceed to the designated coordinates, he decided. Alert the fleet. If we lose contact, they are to withdraw immediately and inform the Council. As the shuttle drew nearer, Xerto finally grasped the Dreadnought's true scale. It dwarfed his flagship, dwarfed everything in the Dominion fleet. Its hull remained that light-absorbing black, but up close he could discern intricate patterns etched into the surface, symbols, or writing in no known language. The shuttle approached what appeared to be a docking bay, a section of the hull that simply opened like a wound healing in reverse. There were no visible mechanisms, no doors or ports. The solid surface merely ceased to be solid. Sir, the pilot's voice was edged with fear. Are you absolutely certain about this? Proceed, Xerto commanded, suppressing his own apprehension. As a senior admiral, he could display no weakness. The shuttle passed through the opening, entering a colossal space that seemed impossible given the external dimensions of that section of the ship. The interior was illuminated by the same pulsing energy visible on the hull, rivers of light following patterns reminiscent of an organic system. As the shuttle settled onto the deck, Xerto noted that there were no other vessels present. No equipment, no signs of the normal hustle of a hangar, just empty space and a single human figure waiting in the center. Stay aboard, he instructed his crew. Maintain open communication at all times. Xerto descended from the shuttle alone, his multiple limbs moving with practiced dignity despite the turmoil within. The atmosphere was surprisingly breathable, adjusted to Varl biology, and the gravity comfortable. The waiting human was male, tall, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that contained visible neural enhancements, glowing rings around the irises that marked him as military. He wore a simple, unadorned black uniform. Admiral Xerto, the human said, his voice carrying the same multi-layered resonance that had addressed the fleet. I am Colonel Lynn O'Shea. Xerto's mandibles clicked once in formal acknowledgement. You command this vessel? I pilot it, O'Shea corrected. No one commands the Star Forged, an autonomous system, then something more complex. O'Shea gestured to their surroundings. What you are seeing is not the physical interior of the Dreadnought. It's a translation. A space created so your mind can comprehend what would otherwise be incomprehensible. Xerto's secondary eyes narrowed. Speak plainly, human. What is this ship? How does it function? And why has Earth concealed such technology from the Dominion? O'Shea offered a thin smile. Those are curious questions from someone who arrived in our system with an invasion fleet. A peacekeeping force, Xerto automatically corrected, to ensure Earth's proper integration into the Dominion. Let's not insult each other's intelligence. Admiral. O'Shea's enhanced eyes seemed to glow more intensely. You came to conquer. You broadcast your intentions to the galaxy, and now you face the consequences of that choice. Xerto's pride flared. The Dominion has brought order and progress to 1,000 worlds. Earth's isolation is an aberration, a selfish refusal to contribute to the greater galactic community. Contribution? Is that what you call subjugation? O'Shea took a step closer. We have watched for 3 centuries as your Dominion absorbed species after species. Those who comply become second-class citizens. Those who resist become examples, a necessary process for maintaining your power. O'Shea finished for him. We understand the game, Admiral. We simply chose not to play it. Xerto felt his patience wearing thin. You have demonstrated an impressive technological advantage, Colonel. But the Dominion spans 17 core systems and hundreds of colonies. Do you truly believe one ship, even one as powerful as this, can stand against our combined might? We don't have to, O'Shea replied calmly. Because right now, across the galaxy, every subjugated species under Dominion control is watching this encounter. They are seeing for the first time that the Varl are not invincible, that resistance is possible. A cold sensation spread through Xerto as he realized the devastating truth of this assessment. The Dominion's power relied as much on perception as on actual military strength. If that perception were damaged, what do you want? He asked finally, his voice hardening. Recognition of Earth's sovereignty, a non-aggression pact, and reparations for the IO atrocity. Xerto's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. The incident at IO was a deliberate act of cruelty. O'Shea interrupted, his voice suddenly sharp. You disabled their shields during a solar storm. You blocked rescue attempts. You broadcast their distress calls so we could hear them die. Something in the human's tone made Xerto involuntarily step back. The pulsing lights around them accelerated, throbbing in time with O'Shea's words. That was a military action, Xerto insisted. The colonists were warned. I was there, O'Shea said quietly. I heard them dying. I heard children crying for help that we couldn't provide because your ships were blocking the approach. The deck beneath them seemed to vibrate slightly, the light patterns growing more intense. I think, O'Shea continued, his voice eerily calm despite the emotion in his words, that you should experience what they experienced. Just for a moment. Before Xerto could respond, the hangar around them dissolved. The walls, floor, and ceiling melted away, replaced by an entirely different environment. They stood in what appeared to be a colony habitat, transparent domes revealing the sulfurous surface of Io beneath, and the massive form of Jupiter dominating the sky above. But something was terribly wrong. The habitat shields were flickering, failing. Through tears in the protective bubble, radiation was pouring in, visible as shimmering waves washing over the colonists. And the colonists were there, humans of all ages, their bodies contorted in agony, their skin blistering from radiation exposure, their voices raised in screams and pleas for rescue. This isn't real, Xerto said, his voice unsteady. This is some form of projection. It's a memory, O'Shea corrected him. Enhanced and reconstructed by the Star Forged. Every detail is accurate. Every death happened exactly as you're seeing it. Xerto watched in horrified fascination as a human child collapsed, reaching toward him with a blistered hand, mouth open in a silent, desperate plea. Stop this, he demanded. Why? O'Shea asked, standing unmoved amidst the horror. This is what you wanted them to experience. This is what you broadcast across frequencies for Earth to hear. The scenes intensified. Colonists in advanced stages of radiation poisoning, their bodies shutting down, medical staff working desperately with failing supplies, communications officers pleading for help that would never arrive. Enough, Xerto shouted, his composure finally shattering. This serves no purpose. The images froze, then dissolved, returning them to the empty hangar bay. O'Shea regarded him with those unsettling enhanced eyes, his expression unreadable. It serves the purpose of understanding, he said quietly. Now you know what you did. Now you feel it. Xerto struggled to regain his dignity, his multiple limbs shifting nervously. These abilities of your ship, they go beyond weapons, beyond technology as we comprehend it. Yes, O'Shea agreed simply. The Star Forged was created from the compressed core of a dying star. A star that, in its final moments, developed patterns of energy that resembled neural activity. We didn't so much build it as awaken it, guide it, and form a symbiotic relationship with it. Impossible, Xerto whispered, though the evidence of his own recent experience contradicted his denial. Return to your fleet. Admiral, O'Shea said, his tone now purely businesslike. Tell them what you've seen. Tell the Dominion that Earth is not to be touched. Not now, not ever. We have remained isolated not out of weakness but out of choice. We chose peace. Do not make us choose war. Xerto stared at the human, seeing him now not as a representative of a lesser species, but as something far more dangerous and equal, perhaps even a superior. And if we refuse these terms? He asked, though he already knew the terrible answer. O'Shea's lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. Then I will use the Star Forged to rewrite reality around your entire fleet. Not destroying it, that would be too merciful. Transforming it perhaps into a cautionary monument that will orbit your homeworld for millennia, reminding your people of the consequences of pride. The threat hung in the air, terrifying in its calm, matter-of-fact delivery. You have 1 hour to withdraw, O'Shea concluded. The terms of our non-aggression pact will be transmitted to your flagship. The reparation schedule is non-negotiable. Xerto's mandibles clicked once in grim acknowledgement. He turned without another word and reboarded his shuttle, his mind racing with the implications of what he had witnessed and experienced. As the shuttle departed the Dreadnought, returning to the Varl fleet, Xerto made the most difficult decision of his military career. Send word to all ships, he ordered his communications officer. We are withdrawing from Earth space immediately. Transmit to the Council that I take full responsibility for this strategic reassessment. Within the hour, the entire Varl fleet had initiated FTL jumps, abandoning Earth's solar system. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. And then, on 100 worlds subjugated by the Dominion, the first whispers of rebellion began. In the neural interface chamber, Lynn's consciousness gradually disengaged from the Star Forged, the connection receding from the dangerous 97% it had reached during his confrontation with Xerto. Back to safer levels. Neural integration at 60%, 50%, 40%, called out a specialist monitoring the process. Dr. Liu stood nearby, relief evident on her face as Lynn's vital signs stabilized. Brain activity returning to normal parameters. Autonomous functions fully human-controlled. When the disconnection was complete, Lynn opened his eyes, his natural eyes, no longer sharing the expanded awareness of the Dreadnought. He felt strangely hollow, limited by the boundaries of his human body after experiencing existence as something so much more vast. How do you feel? Dr. Liu asked, helping to remove the neural connectors from his spine. Small, Lynn admitted, his voice raspy from disuse. That's normal, she assured him. Your consciousness was expanded beyond human parameters for over 6 hours. It will take time to readjust. Admiral Santiago approached, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. Colonel, what you achieved today is unprecedented. The Varl fleet has withdrawn completely. Their command structure is in chaos. Reports are coming in from across the Dominion of uprisings on at least 7 subjugated worlds. Lynn nodded slowly, still processing the transition back to normal human awareness. It wasn't just me. The Star Forged. It's evolving, becoming more than what we designed it to be. Is that a concern? Santiago asked carefully. No, Lynn said after a moment's consideration. It doesn't seek conflict. It's curious about the universe, about life. It wants to understand, not to conquer. Much like humanity at its best, Dr. Liu observed quietly. Lynn managed a small smile. Perhaps that's why we were able to connect. We recognized something of ourselves in each other. The technical team helped him to his feet. His legs felt unsteady as if he had forgotten how to use them while merged with the Dreadnought. What happens now? He asked Santiago. The galaxy has seen what we can do, what the Starforged is capable of. Now we negotiate from a position of strength, Santiago replied. The Human Council is already drafting proposals for a new relationship with the Dominion, one based on mutual respect rather than submission. And the Starforged, it remains our greatest asset and our greatest responsibility. We'll need someone who understands it, who can communicate with it. Santiago met his gaze directly. "We'll need you, Colonel." Lynn looked past her to the chamber walls that separated them from the vast consciousness of the dreadnought. He could still feel it faintly, a presence at the very edge of his awareness. "I need time," he said finally, "to process what happened, to understand what I've become." "Of course," Santiago agreed. "But don't take too long. The galaxy is changing as we speak. The age of Varl dominance is ending. What replaces it will depend in part on what humanity chooses to do with the power we now hold." As they left the chamber, Lynn cast one last glance back at the neural interface chair. For a moment he thought he saw the air shimmer around it, as if the Star Forged was reaching out, seeking connection. "We will speak again," came the thought, not in words, but in concepts and emotions that translated themselves in his mind. "We have much to learn from each other." "Yes," Lynn replied silently. "We do." 3 months later, Lynn stood at the edge of the iron Red Sea on Proxima Centauri b, watching the crimson waves roll onto the shore. His small home remained as he had left it, a sanctuary away from the tumult that now engulfed the galaxy. The news from Earth was promising. The Varl Dominion had signed a non-aggression pact, recognized humanity's sovereignty, and agreed to substantial reparations for the IO atrocity. More significantly, they had been forced to grant similar recognition to 6 other species that had risen up in the wake of Earth's defiant stand. The galaxy was reorganizing itself. The Age of Dominion was giving way to something new, perhaps something better. A soft chime alerted him to an incoming communication. He sighed, then activated the holographic interface. Dr. Lowe's image appeared, her familiar features composed. "Colonel, I hope I'm not disturbing your retirement again." Lynn allowed himself a small smile. "What is it this time, Doctor?" "The Star Forged has been asking for you." That caught his attention, asking how. "It's been generating neural patterns that match your signature. The technical team believes it's attempting to establish contact even without the interface." Lynn felt a familiar pressure at the edges of his mind, that sense of standing before an opening door, feeling the air change. "I've felt it," he admitted. "I thought I was imagining things." "You weren't. Its consciousness is expanding, evolving beyond our original parameters." Lou hesitated. "Some of the council members are concerned." "They're afraid of it," Lynn translated.
Can you blame them?
"Its capabilities are beyond our full understanding." Lynn turned to look at the Crimson Sea again. "What does it want?" "It wants to explore," Lou replied simply. "It's been communicating ideas, concepts for traveling beyond our galaxy, for studying phenomena we've only theorized about. But it seems to want a companion, someone who can help it interpret what it experiences." "Me?" "Yes. The neural compatibility you demonstrated was unique. No other pilot has managed even 70% integration without severe psychological effects." Lynn was silent for a long moment. He thought about his quiet life on this planet, the peace he had found, and he thought about the vastness he had experienced when connected to the Star Forged. The expansion of consciousness beyond human limits. "When would I need to return?" he asked finally. Lou's expression softened slightly. "There's no rush, Colonel. The Star Forged is patient. It thinks in timescales we can barely comprehend. Tell it." Lynn paused, searching for the right words. "Tell it I'll come. Not as a weapon, not as a deterrent, but as an explorer." "I'll convey your message," Lou promised, "though I suspect it already knows your answer." After the communication ended, Lynn remained standing at the shore, watching the alien sea under the light of a red dwarf sun. He felt that familiar pressure again, the Star Forged reaching across space, its consciousness brushing against his. And this time, instead of resisting, he opened his mind to it. Just a little, just enough to send a single thought. Soon, the pressure receded, leaving behind a sense of anticipation, of possibilities unfolding somewhere in the depths of Pluto. The Star Forged Dreadnought waited, not as a weapon of war, but as a vessel of discovery. And Lynn, who had once sought only revenge, found himself contemplating a different future entirely. The stars were waiting, and humanity, having demonstrated its power, could now choose what to do with it. The choice, Lynn decided, was obvious. Not conquest, not dominion, but exploration, understanding, and perhaps in time, wisdom.